fellow called Archie Campbell and went up there. And then Arthur Mattingly, who was another keen birdo, went up, and he got the idea of reserving part of this area as a national park. Birds is the answer. Field Naturalists Club of Victoria and keen bird observers had heard that there were birds up in that part of Victoria. What you've got there is you've got the creek system and the river red gums and the cypress pines, and then you've got the mallee. So you've got a nice diversity of habitat, and so you get a diversity of birds. And they were amazed at the profusion of the birds.
You've got floodplains and creek systems, you've got sand dunes, you've got heath plains, you've got mallee flats. So anywhere where there's a variety of habitats, you get a variety of species. Mammals are my greatest love, but I just love anything in nature. And for a long time I used to fight in campaigns to try and save individual species, but then I realised it was far more important to save their habitat. And then you not only save that species, but everything else that occupied that habitat. So that's really how I got into conservation.
Very few people knew anything about native trees. Most of the literature that we had came from England, and it was not applicable to Australian conditions. So I wrote the Little Tree Book in 1966. Wyperfeld was the first experience that I'd really had of the mallee in looking at the plants of the mallee. And so it was just the excitement of going there and just discovering things which were totally new to me.
We're heading down to the Wonga campground. We're going to go down the Meridian track till we hit the 9 Mile Square track, turn right, follow the 9 Mile Square track for 9 miles.
The big jump in its area was when the Land Conservation Council started in 1970. It was the era of environment.
The management of national parks in the early 1970s were reluctant to offer or to involve the general public, and so they thought if we were sent up to the mallee out of sight of the population might be the way to go. They realised then that the public were a force that they could use, and suddenly more friends groups were encouraged.
There are many benefits, social and environmental benefits from having groups of people volunteering to do things in parks. It fills many needs, not least of which is the social need of people to be involved. At the same time, they're making a contribution to the environment.
I've come to Wyperfeld as part of the Harry Ferguson Tractor Club and to assist with the eradication of rabbits and the revegetation of the park. And we've been involved in fencing and burning and removing rabbit habitat and ripping rabbits, ripping burrows that have been fumigated. And it's been pretty successful. We were here last year, and apparently very few warrens have been reopened, and they've had, I don't know, probably 40 members here this week, and 30 odd tractors, and we're just keen to help out.
I think it's typical of what happens when people work in a particular area. They tend to develop a sense of ownership. They're really proud of what they've achieved, I'm sure, and we are.
We were waiting horehound for several years before they suggested we could have some trees to put in. It was wonderful to come when it was in flood. That was why it took off so well, the Friends group, because the park was still in flood when we formed in 1976.
I came in 1976 and canoed for a week, and that was fantastic, and lots of bird life, and it was difficult to navigate. It all looked much the same, and although I'd walked in the park before, it was completely different. And we canoed from Outlet Creek at the start of the park right through to Lake Bambrook.
I love camping too. I really love sleeping in a tent on the ground, and it's good here because that's the only way you can come and stay.
Well, how long have we been coming up? 12, 14?
About 15, I think.
About 15.
In this spot.
Anyone that moves into this spot will be told,
You've got our spot.
you've got our spot. If they don't move, it's a most uncomfortable weekend for them.
When I was teaching at the university, we used to take students up there and have them out in the mallee as the sun came up and the birds were calling. And you could just see the look on their faces at this vastness, the openness and the sun coming up and the birds. I don't think there would have been many students that wouldn't have been impressed by that.
Walking in this country is difficult because a lot of the tracks are sandy, but it's the only way to see the wildlife.
Well, we had a really good day today. Nice weather. I got to hold a lizard, a blue tongue, in my bare hands. Have you done that?
No.
And we followed emu footprints pretty much the whole way from where we started today until now. I enjoyed that.
Just stay still. Stay there for a while. And it's amazing how many birds come to you. There are so many good things out there. Probably the Major Mitchell is my favourite, but you can't go past a mallee ringneck in its full glory, so to speak, or a mulga parrot, or a splendid wren.
Splendid wrens.
If you see a splendid wren, you'll be blown away.
One that's probably most exciting to see would be the mallee fowl.
We've been friends of Wyperfeld before we were doing any mallee fowl sort of stuff. And one year in the newsletter, they said that they were looking for some people to volunteer to do some mallee fowl monitoring. And then we just got fascinated, I think. The more we knew, the more we sort of learned about it, the more fascinating it all became. And it was just very exciting to be involved in such a large scientific program.
One of the amazing things that I came across, and no one believes this who knows anything about births, was the story of Jane Cameron giving birth to twins at Wonga Station. That's where the campground is now. The Camerons had that area and they were there isolated from anywhere else, and she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. And the story is that those twins were delivered by caesarean section by her husband. It may just be true. National Park at Wyperfeld in the northern part of Victoria is the only mallee reservation in Australia, and as such is of great importance. Its vegetation, stunted and drought-stricken as it is immensely interesting. It is the home of beautiful species of the cockatoo and parrot family. In 2 days, Dr. Leach identified 91 different varieties of birds. It is, however, not fenced, it is not patrolled, and it contains foxes and rabbits like all Mallee country. Many more and varied reservations are required. And then he went on to say, for our own sakes and for the good of all of those who will follow, let us do our best to preserve the wondrous features of the continent. To anyone possessed of imagination, the diversity of life and of form teaches us that we are looking at the outside of the problem, while the real significance is quite hidden from us. Even if, however, we cannot find the complete explanation of this wondrous diversity, we can at all events preserve these fascinating forms of life to stimulate our interests and those of generations to come.
When did he write that?